So very quick video about what happens when you have an amplifier, guitar amplifier, that lights up, nothing's burnt, it's not blowing fuses, it's not making a massive hum through the speaker. In fact, it's making no sound whatsoever. You plug a guitar into the front end and everything seems okay, but there's no life. Now, first test is you plug your guitar, assuming the amplifier has an effects loop. Sometimes this is called preamp out, power amp in, but it's roughly the same sort of thing. You've got an effects loop. The first test you do is to plug your guitar directly into the return of the effects loop. If all of a sudden your amp bursts into life and it's really loud, but obviously the preamp ain't doing anything, you know, you have an issue with an effects loop. And it's very common, it affects all, not all, many amplifiers, be it solid state tube, modelling, whatever, especially for what we have. You have something called a serial effects loop in essence. So your signal gets in through the preamp section, goes in and through the send, the effects send, and then if nothing's plugged in, it'll go through the return and then straight onto the power amp. Okay. If something is plugged in, the signal in effect leaves the send, goes through your chain of pedals or whatever it is you plug it into, and then back into the return. Now, when your amp is silent, totally silent, there could be one of two things that can happen. Firstly, very commonly, is that your effects return socket is either damaged or oxidized. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is that in this particular socket, you probably can't see it that well because I can't really zoom in that well, but I'm going to try anyway. Let's zoom right in and move this that way without knocking the tripod over. When nothing is plugged in, there's the bit of metal there is touching another bit of metal underneath there. Okay, and it forms a connection. The signal goes through as it should. Now, if there is dirt, gunk, oxidization, or whatever that ends up separating these two, or insulating the two bits against each other, you'll get silence because the amp thinks something's plugged in, okay, into the return, and it's not processing the fact that your preamp signal from your guitar is supposed to be going straight through and amplified by the power amp. Okay, so in short, it's that will either need cleaning or more likely the socket needs replacing. Okay, sometimes, not always, if that's not the issue. Sometimes the other thing that can happen is that if the send socket is oxidized and nothing's plugged in, the amount of signal going through, especially when you don't have a particularly good connection there, won't make it through to the default, bridged return socket anyway. So the signal will sound weak and weedy, and it just won't sound anything like the power of as loud as the amp can make it. Again, same cure really. Clean using a burnisher file or whatever, tiny amount of very thin sandpaper. Not ideal because it leaves residue everywhere and takes the coating off the socket. So more likely, given the price of sockets, just replace it. Very quick fix that you might have seen many people who are selling old amplifiers do is force the connection between the send and return by using a patch cable like that. Okay. So before you chuck your amp away, assuming it's not fuses, there's nothing burning or whatever, if your amp goes silent or intermittent or whatever, check send and return sockets. Firstly, plug a guitar into your return and see if it makes a very loud, see if it amplifies your guitar in a very loud manner. If that is the case, then congratulations, you've probably just got a dodgy return socket or oxidized return socket. Like I said, replace the thing, or the quick fix solution is to just patch cable the two. Again, not really a purist ideal solution, but it works and it will get your amp sounding alive again. Okay.